Well, energy and the cost of it is sucking up most of the government's energy at the moment. Just 2 days after Labor's first budget in about a decade, there are now urgent calls to do something about the explosion in cost. Jim Chalmers says he is working on curbing the gas price, and he knows that time is of the essence. I spoke to the Treasurer, but began by asking, when will Australians get their promised $275 savings in their energy bill?
I think we need to recognise that that number was a number produced in modelling in 2021. It referred to an outcome in 2025. And in between then, we've had a war in Ukraine, which is causing havoc on global energy markets and pushing up the price of electricity here. That is the unfortunate reality that we confront. It remains the case that renewable energy is not just cleaner energy, it's also cheaper energy. It remains the case for the time being that what's happening around the world will push up electricity prices here. And it's also a fact that a decade of energy policy failure from our predecessor hasn't helped. It's made us more vulnerable to some of these global price shocks.
Okay, sure, but let's be upfront. They're not going to get that $275 saving, are they?
Well, that number refers to 2025.
Yep.
And I think we've been pretty upfront in the budget. That's why we're talking about it now, in saying that this year and next year we do expect substantial increase in electricity prices. Some of it's actually already flowing through. Some of it's the price rise that Angus Taylor hid during the election, already flowing through. But we presented those forecasts in the budget because we wanted to be upfront about what's happening as a consequence of the war in Ukraine and a decade of energy policy chaos. It remains the case, and it remains our objective to get more renewable energy into the system because it's cheaper. That will bring prices down over time, but there's no use pretending that there won't be pressure on household budgets from higher electricity prices in the interim.
But it's a bit of a joke to cling to these $275 savings in about 3 years' time when energy bills are going to go up $1,000 next year. You can see that.
Well, all I'm pointing out is the fact of that number.
Eventually, renewables will be cheaper.
Yeah, but that number you're referring to is a 2025 number, produced in 2021, and in the middle we had a war in Ukraine.
Sure, but the war in Ukraine happened before the election.
Yeah, but the impact on the electricity market is being felt now. These numbers that we're receiving now from the regulators and from the relevant government agencies, we didn't have before the election. This point about the war in Ukraine, that we knew it would be 20 and 30% over the next couple of years, we didn't receive that advice until quite recently.
Okay.
But it remains the case, it's cheaper if it's renewable. The war in Ukraine is causing the problem, and 10 years of stuffing up energy policy has made the problem worse. All
right, well, you're in charge now. You've been in charge for a couple of months now. What are the options available to you? Will you put a cap on the price of gas?
Well, first of all, the Energy Minister, Chris Bowen, has been working with his state and territory counterparts already. Some of these issues, some of the turbulence in the energy markets has been a focus of Chris and his counterparts in state and territory government, so there's been some good work done there already. In the budget, we did more with the ACCC and the regulators. We funded them more substantially to do some of this work. I have asked the ACCC not just for some more monitoring work in gas markets, but also to input into our policy thinking. That's on a relatively short time frame, and they will provide some advice to me relatively soon, and we'll consider those options. What I don't want to do, given it involves multiple ministerial portfolios and a lot of the regulatory levers are held by the states when it comes to energy markets, is I don't want to unnecessarily limit or preempt the outcomes of the work that's happening now, but there is work happening now. I'm responsible for working with the ACCC on my part of it. Other ministers are doing their bit as well, and the states and territories will play a role too.
Okay, let's talk about the time frame then. You say relatively soon. Industry, the AWU says factories are going to close, so something needs to be done more immediately. Jobs will be lost. So when you say this relatively quick time frame, are you going to make a decision and put something in place within weeks?
I'm not prepared to put a time frame on it yet. I want to be careful and cautious about this. We do have to weigh up here a number of competing objectives. We do care about the contracts that are been signed with international partners. We do care about the investment that some of these companies have made, but we need to take seriously, and I do, comments from Innes Willox, comments from Dan Walton and others about the substantial pressure that Australian industry is under when gas prices are this high. You know, when I was waiting to come on to talk with you this morning, you know, I'm corresponding with Innes Willox about this.
Yeah.
I've met with and toured some of our manufacturing sites. You know, we know that this is a big issue.
So you get it.
We get it. We need to strike some balances here. We need to make sure that anything we do in this space is responsible and sensible, and that's why there's a lot of work that still needs to happen.
Well, the AW has a 5-point wish list, if you like, of immediate action. One of those is bringing government, manufacturers, gas companies, unions and consumers to a point together to find a solution. Are you going to do that?
Oh, well, certainly we'll consult with all of those parts. So, yeah, I think the benefit of what Dan's saying there is to recognise that there are a number of moving parts here, and there are different stakeholders with different views. But I think in our cabinet, certainly there's an understanding and an appreciation that local industry, particularly local manufacturing, gets absolutely punished when gas prices are as high as they are. And so if there's more that we can do in a sensible and responsible way, obviously we'll consider it.
So just to wrap this up and tie it in a bow, is it your inclination to make sensible market intervention rather than direct subsidy to taxpayers? Is that where you're sitting right now?
I definitely think it's worth exploring the first before we resort to the second.
And you wouldn't do the second until the budget in May?
Well, again, I mean, I got asked about this yesterday as well. I don't want to kind of close off options here.
Yep.
You know, because what we've seen in energy markets has been such extreme volatility with such consequences for ordinary Australians and for Australian employers as well. You don't want to kind of close off your options. Some of the things that might be contemplated in these conditions now wouldn't have been contemplated in years gone by. And so that for me is a lesson that you want to keep your options relatively open if you can. Our message to everyone involved in this market is that we understand the pressure, we understand the competing pressures that different parts of the market have. We take that seriously. If there's more that we can do, we will do that. We need to do that in a collaborative way, not just within our show, but more broadly as well, states and territories and industry too.